Welcome to Carey Open, a podcast where we open a window into the world of Carey Baptist College. This episode is a recording from our chapel gathering called Karakia.
So my name's Rachael. I am married to Siosi, and I'm from Auckland, born and raised, and I love Auckland. And people from out of town who don't, you're wrong. I've studied here since 2019. I did intermission, and then honestly, just be careful, you get sucked in and you can't get out. So I'm still here, but no, it's been good. I've learnt heaps from my studies here and from getting to participate in community here. The past few weeks, we've come through some pretty great things in the story of Kings, right? Solomon built the temple. God's spoken to Solomon a few times, which is, wow, God's speaking to somebody. He's gotten wisdom, and then along with that, loads of other good things. But today, we're into maybe the not so good of it. And what one of the commentaries that I read labeled, Shalom is broken. So when reading this section of Solomon's story, the initial standout, perhaps to modern ears, or at least to mine, is all these wives. But apart from the complexities and ickiness of all of these wives, the key here is that Solomon had built a whole bunch of alliances. By intermarrying, Solomon wasn't doing something unheard of or revolutionary. He was simply building alliances and growing in strength and all of those sort of things. Except the difference here is that God has very specifically and explicitly said, do not do that. Do not marry women from these particular places. And he doesn't just say it. He gives a reason in his kindness, his mercy, and his grace. He says, because it will turn your children away from God, from following him. And in the verse we just heard, it says, you shall not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you, for they will surely incline your heart to follow their gods. And it's these women that Solomon clung to, he held fast to. And all throughout Deuteronomy, and loads of places, I've just written Deuteronomy 10:20 on my piece of paper, but there was loads of other places, God talks about holding fast to him and him alone. We only hold fast to God. So Solomon, in this section we hear, chooses alliances at the cost of his allegiance to God. I'm the ministry lead at my church for youth and young adults, but as lots of youthy people have to do, I have another job. I'm a dental assistant and receptionist as well. I'm very grateful for my work that I get to do. But at the clinic, the dentist who owns the place is away on sick leave or injury leave. She's been off for a while. Now, we get some patients who are more than happy to see another dentist that we have available, or even some of them, I'll just go to the clinic that my daughter goes to, or whatever. They're more than happy to see somebody else. You could say that these patients have formed many alliances. On the other hand, we have patients who are completely adamant that they will only see the original dentist. They are extremely unmoving. When they're offered the alternative options, even encouraged to take the alternative options, they say they'll just wait until she's back. Even if it's months and months till she's going to be back. At the risk of their dental health, they say they'll wait until she comes back. Now, in the context of the dentist and the dental practice, these patients are actually a bit of a pain and they can make life quite difficult for me, especially when they can't be reasoned with. They're beyond reason. However, if we were to imagine this kind of allegiance to God, one which is completely unwavering, unmoving, stubborn, and set, we perhaps begin to see an image of what allegiance to God should look like. Allegiance is a pledge. It's a commitment, loyalty, fidelity. And you can't be allegiant to heaps. You're allegiant to one. Many of us, unwittingly perhaps, make alliances in our lives that cost our total allegiance to God? There's a bunch of questions I have in here, so take some that you like, the ones that you don't like, just shove it under the rug. So, what allegiances have you made in your life that are perhaps unrighteous or in opposition to God's standards? What compromises have you made that have either already led or will eventually lead to a lack of allegiance to God? Are your alliances influences? So the people that you spend time with, do they influence you or do you influence them? I'm not talking about our brothers and sisters in Christ, though some of them, we're not perfect. But I'm talking about beyond that. Ask yourself this honestly, because I think as much as we would like to think that we influence others, the reality is, and we just had a class where I heard from my other classmates talking about being formed, and I thought, she could just come preach for me. But the reality is that you will be formed by the people that you spend the most time with in some type of way. We are always being formed, whether it's intentionally or by default. I'd rather be intentional about my formation. Are you spending enough time being influenced and informed by Christ? The people of God are really wonderful. You're all really wonderful and necessary, and community with the people of God is wonderful and it's necessary. But it's not enough to just know other followers of Jesus. You must know him. Just as it wasn't enough for Solomon to know his dad, David, his new influences, his wives, overtook what David had shown him, taught him, what the law of his people had said. Solomon, to his detriment, compromised those things. For some of us, maybe the alliances we have made are to get really good grades, to have a great reputation, the acknowledgement, or to receive acknowledgement of your accomplishments or abilities. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that these are bad things. They can be really good things, but the pursuit of this is not necessarily the pursuit of God. Even and maybe especially if studying the Bible at college, that's the pursuit of God. You got to be careful, because it can still turn into the pursuit of doing well, the pursuit of knowing lots and knowledge and being able to answer other people's questions and sound smart. We don't get a free pass because we study at Bible college. All of these things aren't innately bad, but if they're put in the wrong place, the wrong order, if reputation or grades or acknowledgements are put above knowing God, being allegiant to him, then they're in the wrong place. It's unbalanced. Another compromise might be content or the things that we consume. What do you watch? What do you listen to? What do you participate in? Allow to happen under your roof or in a space that you have authority or stewardship over. Solomon allows defacement of the place that he has authority over. He compromises the standards. And I also think probably a gradual numbing to these things, not even knowing that you're doing it, because we become so used to the things that are not of God's standards. What places do you have authority and stewardship over? That's my next question. What places do you have authority and stewardship over? Do you compromise your values or God's standards to please other people? Have you inadvertently become numb to God's standards simply because of the accessibility of the world's standard? I heard it phrased another way, and I think it was Emma in a class lots of years ago. It was phrased this way: who is on the throne of your life? Or what is on the throne of your life? King Solomon was on the literal throne of Israel, but even Solomon had a choice to put God on the throne of his heart, and therefore in Israel, or otherwise. This text says he did not completely follow the Lord. And for God, this isn't a small infringement, but it's a turning away. The text says Solomon was not true, his wives turned his heart, and that his heart turned away from God. This all begins with the breaking of God's law, and the result is just as God had said it would be. Idolatry, which this section is usually or often titled, is the symptom. It's not the cause. You see, we're not really, well, at least today, we're not really focused on idolatry here. That's an important issue. But if we pay attention, we can see, and as Phil talked about in a class that I did many years ago in pastoral care or counselling, and probably others talk about, God's law is like the fence at the top of the cliff rather than the ambulance at the bottom. It's the solution before there's a problem, and that is allegiance to God. The solution is allegiance to God. So my next question, what is costing your allegiance to God? Paul in the first chapel, I'm pretty sure, spoke about God and. Is that right? Did you talk about that? Yes. Okay, cool. It was God and what? What are the things that you're taking on, that you're holding on to, you're not letting go of because, I'll have God, but I'll also do this, or I'll also have this, or I'll also make alliances with other things. I'll have allegiances to other things. What's the cost? And it's going to come down to if you value the life and the relationship God wants with you. The cost of redemption was Christ's death on the cross. It's a huge, huge cost to pay. There is always a cost to following Jesus, to belonging to God. But if it is indeed what we were made for, then perhaps the perceived cost is really actually much less than we think. For Solomon, the cost of allegiance was to forego alliance through marriage, to forego the woman he wanted to marry, and to forego the worship of other gods. Solomon chose that price to pay, and the consequences were just as God had, in his mercy, warned that they would be. The downfall of Solomon presents an issue of divided attentions, where God asks for wholeheartedness. Solomon trusts in his own strength or ability to form political alliance, rather than to just trust in God wholeheartedly. When do you trust in your ability rather than God's? I can say writing some sermons, hopefully not today's one, I try to trust in my own ability rather than what is the Spirit saying. Maybe it's when you're busy and there's lots of things on your plate and you're like, no, I just got to get these things done. I got to get them ticked off. And you don't pause to go, I actually just need your help, God. This part of the story of Kings is the beginning of Solomon's downfall, at least when it's described, but it's not necessarily the beginning of the downfall. He already married the Egyptian in chapter 3. Is this true? Yes, let's go with it. His downfall was gradual. It didn't happen all of a sudden. It's just a little here and a little there. And before you know it, you've given ground and made way for all of these compromises. Then you're far away from being wholehearted or wholeheartedly following the Lord. You cannot follow anything wholeheartedly if you give little pieces of your heart elsewhere. You cannot serve two masters. Jesus said it in Matthew, and Bob Dylan, I think, said it in a song. Not that he's a theologian, but you've got to serve somebody. It might be the devil, it might be the Lord, but you've got to serve somebody. There's a couple of people who came to mind when I thought of who's somebody who I can think of who looks, at least, like they wholeheartedly follow the Lord. And I thought of one of my young people who she's not very big in stature, but she's so fervent after God. There's two particular stories that stand out. One day she said to her mum, I just want to go and preach the gospel. I want people to know. And so her mum took her and she wanted to stand on the corner of a street and just tell people about Jesus. And, a nice man came by who was a Christian and, encouraged her. And that was it for her. It was a bold and a brave move. And then I heard from some of her friends who also come to youth, and they were like, this one, we went to this thing, and then afterwards we went to, where would you go afterwards if it was a youth thing? McDonald's, yep. And she said, man, like she just felt so fired up about the gospel. She's like, I just got to preach it. Now, forget about methods and whether or not like this is the right way or the wrong. No. Don't worry about that. She stood up in McDonald's on her own and she loudly proclaimed the gospel. That's wholehearted following. I think of my husband's mum. She is fervent after the Lord. Whatever it is that she feels like the Lord is saying, and again, hey, I'm not talking about always getting it right, but she will follow after what God is saying. I saw her in church on Sunday in the foyer. There was a lady who had strapping around her ankle, and she got down on her knees and she said, I'm just going to pray for healing. Is that okay? And she was down there for a long time. She will go and she'll feed the homeless. There's a man who she came across on the walk that she does, and you know, he doesn't really want people to come see him, but she is intentional about seeing him, and she brings him food, the things that he wants, the things that he doesn't want, and she just wants to share the gospel with people through her actions and through her words. You will often hear her saying to the not yet followers of Jesus in the household, yeah, you just need to follow Jesus. I don't know if it turns their hearts, but hey, the seeds are being planted. I think that these people show something of wholeheartedness in their commitment and enthusiasm to serve God. However, the thing about our hearts is that really only God sees them. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. That's from the Psalms. 139. Only God really knows our hearts, but there is fruit or evidence for one which is inclined, a heart which is inclined to God's. Solomon's dad, King David, was known as a man after God's own heart. And according to this psalm, he gave over his own heart to be searched and tested by God. I think so far as literal, wholehearted following of God, we don't usually do this all at once. Slowly but surely we allow the Spirit of God to transform us in our lives. Perhaps we become more wholehearted in our following of Jesus. I'm pretty sure this process is called sanctification. I think it was Krista that once phrased it this way, that God dignifies us in the process. Whether or not it was about this, I can't remember, but it works here, I think. But I guess the point is that we're not treated in such a way that transformation is forced or imposed. We get the dignity and the delight of choosing allegiance with God. And we may know that as we endeavour in our humanness to give all of our hearts to our loving Father, that with utmost care God takes his time with us. As we incline our hearts towards his, we find that his is already awaiting ours. I have probably too many times quoted C.S. Lewis when he articulates this transformation. And it would have been in probably a good 50% of my assignments. The more we let God take us over, the more truly ourselves we become, because he made us. So, next question. How's your heart? I think this time of year around Easter is as good as any to check in with how your heart is. Is it inclined towards God, or is it away? Does it feel far or near to his? We're coming into land. I don't want to leave anyone feeling condemned or less than if you find the state that your heart is in not what you would have hoped it would be. The encouragement is that God takes his time with us, and we can at any stage, in any season, ask God to search us and know us because he's faithful. In this passage, we see a really poor example of faithfulness. Solomon fails miserably to be faithful to God. But in juxtaposition, we get to see a wonderful image of true faithfulness, which is from God to his servant David, even after his death. Not because of anything that Solomon has done, and actually it's in spite of it. God's justice is exercised, but so is his faithfulness in mercy. So, as we come into this Holy Week, with a message not specifically about the Passion of Christ, but about allegiance to God, perhaps something to consider. Are your allegiances with the man who for the love of the world died on that cross? If you can imagine it, if you can picture Christ dying on the cross, this is the man who we get to give allegiance to. Are your allegiances with the man who, for the love of the world, died on that cross. To he who gave his life, will you give your heart?
The Baptist NZ Podcast Network.